Okay, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to what is, I believe, the 20th in the Shvatim series and the last in the Shvatim series. So this is the final shiur of the Bnei Rachel series and really rounding off the final shiur of this much broader series on the tribes of Israel, on the Shvatim. And so it makes sense that we are going to end our examination of the Shvatim with the youngest Shevet, the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Binyamin. I had entitled this shiur, I believe, Binyamin, the underhanded Shevet. And I hope to, over the course of the next hour, explore why I think that that is his dominant trait, his underhandedness, if you will, a certain lack of straightforwardness that we see when it comes to Binyamin, among other traits that are also that are quite prominent. But I chose that one. Maybe it was because it was the most evocative of Binyamin's traits.
Are
Now,
you
I'm not
going to,
starting here.
are you going to mention that his birth,
Yes, I'm
that,
going to mention his birth. I'm going to hit all of the markers
no,
as we
are
as
you
we
going are you going to mention the fact that his birth gave entitled Rachel to be labeled as the first Nevi'ah because she asked for Ben Acher?
Oh, I don't know if I would call her the first Nevi'ah, but
The
we like
Talmud says that. The Talmud says that.
that she's the first Nevi'ah over and against
Or,
Sarah.
or maybe one
But
of
I'll
them.
tell you, let me just ask for all questions to hold till the end, just for ease of the logistics of the shiur. And then I hope to get to all questions and the ones that I am capable of addressing that I'm happy to address. That's probably one that I'll have to leave for somebody else to weigh in on because I'm not familiar with that concept. But I'll just ask everyone and a bit of housekeeping, just to remind you to mute yourselves during the shiur and then and write any questions that you may have in the chat to make sure that we get to them at the end. And then, of course, I Bezrat Hashem will be able to also take any questions that anyone may have that they don't write in on the chat. But I'm not starting with Binyamin's conception or his birth. I'm actually starting, as you pointed out, with an earlier note about Binyamin, which is Yosef Hashem li ben Acher, and the naming of Yosef, the birth of Yosef. And it's the birth of Yosef that really marks this watershed moment for both his mother Rachel and his father Yaakov, and almost to the point where Binyamin seems and his birth seems like an afterthought, at least for Yaakov. So we'll start with Yaakov. Once Yosef is born, Yaakov feels that he has reached a new state in his development, almost as if his family has been built. Vayhi kasher yalda Rachel et Yosef, once Rachel births Yosef, Vayomer Yaakov el Lavan, Shalcheni ve'elchal mekomi la'artzi. Here we are in Padan Aram, in the house of Lavan, and Yaakov feels that upon Rachel having contributed to the constellation of his family is contributed a biological son to the family. Now it is time for Yaakov to move on. It is time for Yaakov to go back to his father's house and to his land. And so it was clearly a turning point in Yaakov's estimation. And this is because for Yaakov, Yosef marks probably the most seminal birth. He completes the family. He is the apple of his father's eye beyond completing the family. He dominates in his father Yaakov's thoughts. Ela toldot Yaakov Yosef. Yes, I'm choosing a little drashic reading here. These are the generations of Yaakov, Yosef, Yosef ben Shvas Shana. I say it's a midrashic read because one need not have said it the way that I just did. I just said, these are the generations of Yaakov, Yosef, right? Like, and we would expect that the lineage of Yaakov would start with his firstborn Reuven and not with his 11th born son, Yosef. And as far as we know, his 12th child, although there may have been more children born that just didn't, especially girls, that didn't register as tribes. But Yosef is the tolada. He's the outpouring, the generation, the production, as it were, of Yaakov. And yes, this is in the context of the story of Yosef and his dreams, and soon his planned murder by his brothers, and then his sale. That's what we're dealing with in this chapter. And so, Ela Toldot Yaakov Yosef, again, Yosef, Yaakov is thinking of Yosef as a turning point. Higati, I'm perhaps I'm done. He sees Yosef as his Ben's Kunim. Ben's Kunim is an old new phrase. It's a phrase, obviously a biblical turn of phrase that literally, according to almost all of the Mefarshim, means the son of my old age. It's a new phrase because we still use it in modern Hebrew idiom as if you have a child at a later point in your life, right? Your not only your youngest child, because somebody can have their youngest child earlier on in life, but specifically a ben skunim, a later product, a later child, and so Yosef is considered by Yaakov his ben skunim. Now, usually ben skunim means like your last child. And I called our youngest one our Ben Skunim, and that we know is not the case. We know that there will be another son, but in Yaakov's estimation, Yosef is his Ben Skunim, his final effort, or alternatively, Midrash understands Ben Skunim not as a final effort, but as the repository of all that is wise. The Ben Zekunim, like I've used this turn of phrase before. Ben Torah means the repository of Torah. Bat Chen, the repository of grace, right? The whole, that which holds Torah, that which holds grace. Bat Torah, the repository of Torah, not literally the child of my old age, but the child of all that is zaken, all that I have achieved in my old age, all of the wisdom I've achieved. Yaakov assigns to Yosef a special assignment, which we know is capped off with this special gift of his ketonet pasim, of his coat of many colors. And so Yaakov thinks of Yosef as kind of this, I'll say it conservatively, a watershed moment, and then I'll say what I think that the subtext here is really the end. This is my Ben Skunim. This is my Tolada. This is where I have achieved my the height, the apex of my generations, of my offspring, and now it's time for me to move on to the next stage of my life. When it comes to Rachel, as you had pointed out, that is not the case. Rachel immediately upon the birth of Yosef says, I have more in me to provide and to produce for this family. Vatikrat Shmo Yosef, but she's the one who names him Yosef after the idea of God shall grant me yet an additional one, another son. And so in her mind, Yisrael is not complete. Yisrael, meaning the family of Yisrael, is not complete. And of course, that is the situation that we all are familiar with, that an additional son is born by her to the family. And this son is born after some of the most monumental experiences that Yaakov has gone through in his life. Binyamin does not experience them. For one, he doesn't experience an existence outside of the land of Eretz Canaan. Later on in his life, he'll go down to Mitzrayim, but he is born in Eretz Canaan, so he doesn't experience he's not an Oleh. He wouldn't get a Tudat Zehut. He wouldn't get a Tudat Aliyah. He would get a Tudat Zehut. He would be considered a Sabra, right? He wouldn't be an immigrant the way that all of his brethren were. Additionally, he never experienced that pivotal moment of the meeting between Yaakov and his brother Esav. That meeting that happened so many years after they had parted so bitterly, when they re-meet up when Yaakov is journeying back to Eretz Canaan, Binyamin is not yet born. So that obsequious stance that Yaakov and his household take towards his brother, Adoni Esav, my master Esav, is not something that Binyamin has ever experienced. And it's almost like you can look at Binyamin and you can say the difference between, let's say, an immigrant to the land of Israel and a Sabra. I think that that's a good way to put it in terms of almost their different experiences in the world. And so Binyamin is born once Israel's family is back in Eretz Canaan. And we know the story of his birth is quite sorrowful in that as he is being born, his mother Rachel dies. Now, the midwife assures her, don't worry, this one too is a son. I guess there are many ways to read that verse, but I think that probably the most straightforward way of reading it is, do not worry, you will have achieved that which you hope to achieve, which is adding another tribe to the family of Yisrael, adding another son specifically to the family of Yisrael. She names him Ben Oni, and then her husband Yaakov names him Binyamin. He is the only child. He is the only one of the tribes who is named both by his mother and his father. As I have taken pains to point out, all of the tribes received their names from their mother or from the mother that called them into conception. In other words, Bilhah and Zilpah do not name the children that they physically bear because they're really offspring of Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah name all of the children with the exception of Levi, where it's unclear who names Levi, but it's a masculine who names Levi. Either Yaakov, that's the Pshat, or God himself, and Binyamin, where it's clear that both his parents name him. Or one can say that Yaakov corrects the name of Rachel. Rachel names him Ben Oni. Ben Oni carries with it most likely the intimation, the connotation of sorrow. Ben Oni in the sense of Ben Sa'ari, the son of my pain, the son of my sorrow. I shall not see him grow up. I am not long for this world. So that's probably where Ben Oni comes from. Alternatively, the term on or oni, my version of on, means also strength. Think of how Reuven is blessed by Yaakov. Kochi v'reshit oni, my strength and the first of my vigor. Right? Oni being a parallel, a synonym to Kochi. And so Ben Oni, not the son of my sorrow, but the son of my strength. This one has taken my life force. My life force is invested in Binyamin, and then I shall expire. And then the father, and I say in a corrective term here, Yaakov names him Binyamin only if it's a correction for the first kind of sad naming. If indeed Rachel intended the son of my sorrow, then Binyamin comes and Yaakov comes and adjusts the name so that the child not bear that difficult name for perpetuity, but adjust the name to Binyamin, the son of my strength, of my might. Yamin, the right hand, which is the symbol of strength. So, if that is the case, then he's correcting the son of my sorrow. If it is Ben Oni, the son of my strength, that's what Rachel is saying, my life force, then he is reaffirming Rachel's intent, but without any possibility that it might be open to misinterpretation, right? Because Ben Oni can go in two different directions, son of my sorrow or son of my strength, and Yaakov is affirming this one is the son of my strength. And so just to throw out, I didn't bring the sources here that survey all of the different potential meanings of Binyamin. The classic understanding is the son of my strength. It can also be Benyamin, the nun and the mem interchangeable there as the son of days, Yom, right? The son of Yamim, the son of days, meaning this one shall live a long life. It was a blessing that Yaakov was bestowing onto his son. That's from the Midrash Agadah, Sefer Midrash Agadah. And then the third possibility that I found as to the meaning of Binyamin is the son of the south. This is the one that was born in the south. All of the other of my sons were born in the northeast, in Padan Aram, Aram Naharaim, and this one was born differently, meaning location-wise, he is being named after the fact that that very, very important fact that he is separate, distinct, and in the sense of being born in Eretz Canaan, in the southwest. Son of south. Why is Yamin south? Well, because the directions in the Torah have Kedma, forward facing, being east. If you, especially in Bereshit, if there's a ruach kadim or any language of kuf dalid mem directionally implies easternward. So imagine that you're facing easternward. That means that behind you is achora, so kedma's east, achora's west, yamina is south, and tzafona is north. Tzafona, from the idea of tzafun, of being hidden, because when you're facing east, then and the sun is rising, then your left side, your north, is in the shade. So that, if you recall, tzafun is one of the stages of the seder. Anyway, Yamina, Ben Yamin would be the southern-born son. So no way to understand Binyamin's naming from Yaakov in any kind of a negative sense. This is a child who is born not just to Yaakov, but born to Yisrael. It's near impossible, even upon the devastation of the loss of his most beloved Rachel, for Yaakov to not name this last gasp of his beloved in a positive sense, because he's not just Yaakov, he is already Yisrael. He himself has undergone a metamorphosis. He has been given his second name, and twice over. Once when the angel is wrestling with him and gives him the name Yisrael, which is reaffirmed by God in Beit El. And this is prior to the birth of Binyamin. So this is a son, that the only son of Yaakov that's really born to Yisrael. So it's really the only son of Yisrael, because all of the other sons were born when the man was known as Yaakov and he was not known as Yisrael. And this is the son that's born to Yaakov / Yisrael. So he will have a special auspiciousness, let's say, to him, because of the changes that his father has gone through and the family has gone through, due to his father's shift from Yaakov, the personal, to Yisrael, the national, the sovereign, the empire, the potential for empire, the far more powerful name Yisrael. And so, given that, Yaakov clearly names his son in a very positive sense. Again, perhaps correcting Rachel's sorrowful naming. Given that everything that we know about Yaakov's obsession with Binyamin, especially in the wake of Yosef's disappearance, right? We know that Yaakov felt extremely extremely um, he was very nervous about Binyamin. He was very nervous to lose Binyamin. We know because Binyamin was the last connection that he had really to Rachel, and he didn't want to risk the loss of Binyamin. And so I find it very surprising that when he blesses Binyamin um, on his deathbed, and we know the brachot that Yaakov gives to these sons are the brachot that are scoping out for a vision for the entire tribe. He's not precious about it. He's not saying, "Oh, my little sweet little boy, my little, delicious son that I just want to hug and hold on to." There's nothing infantile. There's nothing reductionist. There's nothing, sweet about the blessing that he gives to a son that we would expect him to feel only sweetness to. Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf. Binyamin is a predatory wolf. We have no clue about this over the course of the book of Genesis. There's nothing about Binyamin that implies any kind of danger, implies any kind of bloodlust, implies a ravenous wolf or a predatory creature. I would say I'm trying to make the point that the argument that it's just the opposite, that we would think of him as like this coddled little child who did not participate in the sale of Yosef, who was barely present with his brothers in all of their shenanigans and in their descent to Egypt, and was very much coddled and protected by his father and his brothers. But no, he emerges as the ravenous wolf, as the predatory wolf. And so it's a very surprising turn that I'd like to explore over the course of a quick survey that I want to do of what happens with Binyamin and the tribe of Binyamin over the course of their development as a tribe. We don't really know too much about the tribe of Binyamin. There are a few stories in the Pentateuch about the tribe of Binyamin, but we do meet Binyamin strongly in the book of Judges again, where we have a famous judge that comes from Binyamin, and we also, even more infamously, have the entire tribe of Binyamin, almost decimated, nearly to a man, right? Almost entirely knocked out from the confederacy of the tribes of Israel. This happens at the end of the book of Shoftim, and Binyamin in the story of the concubine from Giva, which was a city in Binyamin, and all of the tribes unite not only to destroy the city of Giv'ah, where this terrible atrocity had taken place, but they unite to wipe out the entire tribe, man, woman, child, sheep, goat, everything. They have a change of heart towards the end and allow 600 men from Binyamin to remain as refugees, and they try to rehabilitate the tribe. But we were this close to losing our integrity as Am Yisrael, to losing a tribe in Israel. You lose one tribe, you lose the entire nature of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael requires the integrity of all of the tribes. So in the context of talking about the near destruction of the tribe of Binyamin, we're given an interesting detail about that will perhaps let us understand a little bit more about Binyamin as a ravenous wolf. And we're told that they were expert sharpshooters, that as they're preparing for war against the rest of Israel in this horrible civil war, we see that a couple of details here. Iter yad yamino, they were left-handed, or perhaps ambidextrous, perhaps deliberately trained their left hands to be able to be dexterous in with both hands, ambidextrous. They were expert sharpshooters. They could shoot from a distance and hit their target. This is a theme that is echoed elsewhere. We see here in the second book of Chronicles, in describing the army that the Judean king Asa, he was a good king, king of Yehuda, he had assembled for himself. Now, of course, all the kings of Yehuda are not just the tribe of Yehuda, it's the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Binyamin. Remember that Yehuda and Binyamin form the kingdom of Yehuda, and the other tribes form the kingdom of Israel. In the age of the monarchy. So Asa, the king of Yehuda, when he's assembling his army, he has these 300,000 Judahites who are really good, let's say, standard infantry, right? They have the shields and they have the spears, and they know how to, they're the conventional army. And then you have the commandos. Umi Binyamin, Nosei Magen V'Darchei Keshet, or the snipers, I guess. You know, the Binyamin who were able to use their bows and arrows in astounding ways. There were 280,000 of those. So echoing in a far later iteration of history, that same idea of Binyamin being the purveyors of the slingshot arts, I guess, right? They're the snipers. They're the ones who can hit from far distance. And we hear this as well, echoing in the stories of Shaul and his son Yonatan, who are also described always with their bows and arrows, not with their spears. Yeah, Shaul is described with his romach, with his spear, that this is true. But Yonatan is described as having his Yonatan lo nasa gachar. This is the elegy that David HaMelech gives upon the demise of King Shaul, King Saul, and his son Yonatan, David's beloved friend Yonatan, and he describes Yonatan in warrior terms as Keshet Yonatan. These obviously these princes of Binyamin, Shaul and Yonatan, are from the tribe of Binyamin, described as having their bows and arrows. And Yonatan himself, when he was alive and he was trying to save David, who was not yet king, from the attacks of his father Shaul, came up with a ruse to try and see if Shaul truly wanted to kill David, and without getting too deeply into the details of that story in the 20th chapter of the first book of Shmuel. Yonatan says, you're going to be missing the big feast of Rosh Chodesh, and you're not going to be there. And I have to see how my father reacts to that. If he thinks that you are rebelling against him, or if he's marking your absence. Now, the way we're going to do this, David, Yonatan says to him, is that you're going to go down to the place where you hid the last time, our stomping grounds, especially when we were boys, we would be playing with the bows and arrows there. And if I'm going to I'm going to shoot 3 arrows, and depending on where they hit, that's going to be a sign for you. That's all aside the point. I'm pointing out here that Binyamin, Yonatan of Binyamin, is using the bows and arrows, using this particular weapon, which is second nature to him, to warn David. Now, in addition to Binyamin being experts in slingshot, bows and arrows, which you know what? Let's just talk for a second about what I mean by all of this. What do I care? What, like, their weapon of choice? Well, their weapon of choice is a weapon that allows you as the warrior to fight unconventionally. The the sniper, I mean, think of, David and his slingshots, right? The sniper, or he who wields the bow and arrow, has much more flexibility and is much more able to fight a guerrilla war, a crafty war, to use the terrain, than one who has the romach, the spear, and the sword, which requires far more conventional, let's say, frontal warfare. Then the bow and arrow, imagine, it allows you to be much more flexible in the attack. And of course, then it makes so much sense that over and over again, when Binyamin is described, he's always described as left-handed, or at least ambidextrous, but always in the sense of like being able to use both hands. Because he wants to maintain that flexibility. Let's take a look here at Divrei Hayamim. And this is the first book of Chronicles, not in the context of the King Asa, but in the context of David, when he was still hiding from Shaul. There were warriors from Binyamin who came to help him, and they're described here as noshkei keshet. They were able to play around with their bows and arrows, miminim umismilim. Omasmilim. They could shoot in any direction, right? I mean, as someone who grew up in a baseball family, I can tell you that if you can hit both right and left, right, then you just are gonna be screwing up the pitcher there, right? You have, it's like you have a very special weapon in your arsenal, in that you have that flexibility. So not only are you using the weapon of flexibility, you also have honed your skills to be able to maintain that flexibility. The most famous Benjaminite, other than Shaul, the first king of Binyamin, was the judge, the second judge of Israel, who was from Shevet Binyamin, a judge by the name of Ehud. And how is he famously described? Ehud ben Gera ben Hayemini. He's the Benjaminite. Ish iter, I shouldn't say he's the most famous. Mordechai and Esther probably eclipse him in fame, but he is quite a famous Benjaminite. Ish iter yad yemino, a man with a withered right hand. Right now, what does that mean? A withered right hand? I think that it's very possible to understand that he was a lefty, or perhaps it was a dominant genetic trait among the Benjaminites, or perhaps what we mean is that he was he deliberately weakened his right hand so that he could strengthen his left hand, so that he would maintain that ambidextrosity. He needed this so that he could achieve what it was that he wanted to achieve, which is that everybody thinks that he's a lefty, and nobody would know that he actually maintained some strength in his right hand. You can read it anyway in any of those kivunim, in any of those directions. The importance here is that over and over the text stresses that Binyamin were lefties. Of course, there's the high irony that the son of the right is actually a left-handed tribe, right? Ben Yamin, the son of the righties, are actually all lefties. And so again, I'll just draw your attention to the two sources we've already seen at the end of the book of Judges, in describing the army of Binyamin amassing against Am Yisrael. They're also described as Shvamayot Ish Bachor Iter Yad Yimino, the special 700 commando units who were all lefties. And then later on in the book of Chronicles, again, those who amassed to Asa, the king of Judah, are also described maiminim umasmilim, being able to use both their right and their left. Now, the point here, whether we're talking about the bows and arrows as the Benjaminite weapon of choice, whether we're talking about the left-handed nature of this tribe, is that this is a tribe that has honed itself or is genetically predispositioned to unconventional warfare. And that is the key here. And that's, we'll take one example with Ehud. Ehud, the warrior, the savior who's coming to save Am Yisrael from Moab, when he goes and he has to confront the Eglon Melech Moab, the bovine king. I love that play, right? Because Eglon means fatty cow. That's what the word Eglon means. And the description of Eglon Melech Moab was that he was corpulent, I guess would be a good description, right? It might not be the most flattering description, but that's how he's described. Bari me'od, quite healthy. Ralbag in discussing why we need to know that Binyamin or the Ehud may Binyamin was Iter Yad Yamino was a lefty, says that the whole point was the subterfuge. That if we know that he's a lefty, then we'll understand that he approached his attack of Eglon in a very calculated, very manipulative, very guerrilla-like way. Not a straightforward conventional battle with a sword. Let's see how the Ragbag puts it. When the Israelites returned to God and cried out to God, and God appointed a savior to save them from the clutches of Moab. God appointed Ehud ben Gera, the Benjaminite. Ubitachbulot asalo b'milchama, with all kinds of schemes and all kinds of subterfuge. Ehud planned the attack on Eglon. We remember that's how he was able to get to Eglon. He said, we're going to send tribute. We're going to go to Eglon's palace, pay tribute to him. And Eglon will be thrown off guard because we're paying tribute to him. He will look at me, this Nebuch lefty, right? And I'm a lefty, so like I can say that, right? So the Nebuch lefty who can't wield a sword, clearly when he sees that there's no sword on my left side, because all men who were warriors would wear swords on their left side so that they could draw them with their right hand, he'll realize that there's nothing to fear. And indeed, I'm just going to even hide my sword. And I'm going to make a charav pipiot, a very small sword, very dangerous and lethal sword, but it's small, and I will hide it, and I will hide it on my right side, and he will have no clue, given all of the ruse that we're creating here, that I'm creating, Ehud says, that I intend to kill him. And I will catch him off guard, and I will play off of his vulnerabilities, because I am fighting in a very underhanded fashion. Underhanded doesn't necessarily, and my intent here is not to say an unfair fashion. By underhanded, I mean a very clever fashion. You are much more of a capable warrior if you can think fast on your feet, if you're not burdened down by the conventions of traditional warfare. Let's just think of the month of Binyamin is Kislev, the month that we're in now. It's the month of the Maccabim. It's the month of those champion Israel warriors who fought in the most unconventional war that perhaps I'm not a student of war, but let's say a very unconventional war, a war of the few against the mighty, and the way that they were able to fight this war with very little by way of traditional military training, by very little by way of traditional arms against this massive Syrian army of Antiochus, was through guerrilla warfare, was through knowing the terrain, being able to take advantage of the terrain, being able to take advantage of their enemies' weaknesses, exactly the way that Ehud could take advantage of Eglon's physical weaknesses and play off of the trust that he had built with Eglon. This whole concept of the lefties. is heightened for us by the convention, the biblical convention that right makes might. In a very specific sense, I mean that the right hand means might. Binyamin, when he was named by Yaakov, was being named son of my might, son of my strength. I bring you here just a few examples from Tanakh, one from the book of Exodus, one from the book of Psalms. Yemincha Hashem nedzari b'koach. Yemincha Hashem tirat oyev. It's your right hand that signifies dominance and strength. And we see the same in Tehillim. Yemin Hashem romema, Yemin Hashem oseh. When we want to talk about might and strength, we talk about the right hand. When we say left, we usually mean weaker and more submissive. In the case of Binyamin, it's not with a attack. And perhaps this is what Yaakov had in mind when he blessed Binyamin, Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf. Baboker yochal ad, v'la erev yichalek shalal. This brief blessing that Yaakov gives to his beloved son, who again, we would imagine almost like swaddled, right? Like it's so hard to think of the stories of Yaakov and Binyamin without thinking that Yaakov just wants to keep Binyamin in his arms as the vestige of Rachel. But no, in naming him after this predator, the predatory animal of the Ze'ev, he is giving him an entirely different persona that will be the hallmark of Binyamin as a tribe. No shrinking wallflower is Binyamin. No pacifist is Binyamin. He's not a conventional warrior. He's not Gad, and he's not Yehuda, but he is the underhanded warrior who is an extremely effective warrior and is not bothered by the blood that he must spill over and over again throughout the generations. Babokar yochal ad, in the morning he consumes the foe, v'la erev yichalek shalal, and in the evening he divides the spoils. I bring you here Rav Hirsch in English, of course, because I don't read German. So Rav Hirsch on this verse points out something as a grammarian, points out something very specific. Note that the verse does not say Ze'ev Toref. Now look at this translation here. It might not be the best translation. This is Ze'ev Toref. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In other words, Toref is an adjective describing the wolf. Benjamin is the wolf. And what kind of a wolf is he? Not some kind of a fearful wolf. He is a predatory wolf. Right? The shoresh taraf is to prey upon or prey. And so the verse does not say, though, that he is a predatory wolf or a ravenous wolf. The verse does not say Ze'ev Toref. It doesn't say an adjective to the wolf, but rather Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf. That Ze'ev is the object of the verb. In other words, Binyamin Yitraf et HaZe'ev. Binyamin is not a wolf, but Binyamin is the tribe that will tear apart and prey upon the wolf. It will be the smallest and youngest of the sons who will drive the wolf, eternal Amalek, away from the flock of Yaakov. What a brilliant and insightful reading of Rav Hirsch. Katonti to say that because it's Rav Hirsch, but it's a very, very careful look at the grammar here, which isn't looking at Yitraf as a descriptive here, but saying Binyamin Yitraf et Ze'ev. Ze'ev is the object. Binyamin will tear apart the Ze'ev, the wolf, our foe, Amalek. And Rashi, it hints to this concept about specifically Amalek being the foe that Binyamin will be charged to destroy. We have many enemies. We have, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, but it is Amalek that is the enemy that Binyamin specifically is primed to destroy. Boker yochal ad, here we're looking at Rashi, va'al Shaul hu omer, she'amar b'tchilat pri chatan uzrichatan shel Yisrael. In the beginning of Israel's trajectory as a nation, their first king Shaul from Benjamin near bested the Amalekites. Remember his most important seminal battle against Agag, the king of Amalek? He didn't fully destroy Amalek, but that he would have to leave to his descendants, Mordechai and Esther. Ula Arab Yichalek Shalal. Ad shemishtakash shan shel Yisrael al yedei Nebuchadnezzar sheyaglem leBavel Yichalek Shalal. Many hundreds of years on, generations on, once Israel was already taken into the Babylonian exile, at that point Benjamin would reemerge and divide the spoil. Mordechai ve'Esther shehemi Binyamin yichalku et shlal Haman. They would divide up the spoil of Haman, who is, of course, Ha'agagi, who is an Amalekite himself. So Rashi is foreechoing, let's say, or foreshadowing this brilliant insight of Rav Hirsch, in that the enemies that Binyamin counters at the genesis of Am Yisrael as a nation in the days of Shaul, and at one of their seminal victories in the days of Mordechai, are both Amalek. And so that does leave us with the question, why specifically Amalek? What is it about Amalek that Binyamin is primed to counter? Before we get there, let me make my point even more strongly with another comment, another commentary of Rav Hirsch. Yaakov's final glance comes to rest upon the end of days, when the last of the world powers will be overcome. Already in the early morning, at the outset of the nation's history, he's commenting here on Baboker, the verse Baboker yochal ad v'la'erev yichalek shalal. Already in the early morning, at the outset of the nation's history, Israel will deal the wolf a powerful blow. That's Agag, Melech Amalek. But in the evening of time, the end of days, he will destroy the wolf completely. Rav Hirsch is not saying Mordechai. He's saying at the end of days, Ketz Hayamin, then we still have Amalek as a conceptual enemy that that enemy. And Midrash Bereshit Rabbi Shmuel to Amalek's sentence that it will no that
Tamar,
that
we lost you.
and Amalek will only
No.
Tamar, you're in and out. You're not coming across clearly.
Whoops. Tamar, we can't see you at all. Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, but we lost you for
You
a
lost me for a
while.
little bit?
Yeah, go back to Rabbi Hirsch.
Oh, all the way back to Rav Hirsch. Okay, fine. I'm sorry about that. So I'm glad. Thank you for those of you who stayed. And so this Rav Hirsch, right? So this Rav Hirsch is just expanding Rashi's concepts here by saying we're not talking about Mordechai as the Erev Yichalek Shalal, as besting Amalek in the days of Haman, but rather in the future times, Ketz Hayamin, that Israel will deal the wolf its final blow and destroy the wolf completely. So we still have to wait for that moment when Amalek will be destroyed. And then I just brought here, rounding off this idea, this motif in Bereshit Rabbah is continued by Bereshit Rabbah, in that it will be the sons of Rachel who are charged with destroying Esav, and Amalek, of course, a descendant of Esav. The Tziirei Hatzon, the youngest of Yaakov's flock, will be responsible for destroying Esav. Now, given that we only have 10 minutes left, I want to make sure that I explain why it has to be the Yemini, why it has to be the Benjaminites who battle Yosef, who battle Amalek. And I think that there are a few ways to answer this question. I've dealt with some of them earlier on in the shiur. First of all, take a look here. Let's move a little bit forward. See if I have the Targum Sheni. No. I don't know what happened to that source, but I had in my original source sheet a source for you here, which is a midrash that inserts language into Mordechai's, it gets into Mordechai's head and explains why Mordechai was not going to bow to Haman. And basically the idea there that Mordechai does not bow to Haman is that he's saying it was my ancestors. Let me see if I have it here. If I have it in any of my pages. Yes. Okay. I'll read to you the English translation. Mordechai says, I am from the descendants of Binyamin. When Yaakov bowed before Esav, Binyamin was not yet born, and he never in all his life bowed before a mortal. Hence, an eternal covenant was made in his nachala, that will dwell in his border, that all the nations will bow and prostrate themselves.
Tamar, we're still losing you from time to time.
Can't hear you. We lost you.
Am I back?
No, you're choppy.
No, you're not back yet.
I'm still choppy. Okay. One.
Try again.
So, okay. Am I still choppy? Can you hear me? Am I coming through it all?
Very, very choppy.
It's not. I'm coming in choppy. Do you
Tamar,
have any ideas
Tamar,
as to how I can?
try maybe without
Yes.
video. Try maybe without video.
Okay, sorry. Hopefully this will be the end of it. I apologize for that. Hold on, I gotta share my screen one more time. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So I was saying that the reasons why Binyamin is the Ze'ev Yitraf, blessed as such by Yaakov to counter Amalek specifically is that Binyamin has the special quality of never having bent his knee to any member of Esav or Esav's entourage, any Esav himself or Esav's entourage. He stands as almost like separate from the rest of his family in that respect. He's as I tried to build this concept, his particular method of warfare, indirect and and underhanded and unconventional, was definitely served him in good stead fighting Amalek, in that Amalek is also an unconventional enemy. Amalek is much more of a concept. Amalek is almost the spin that that is given to all of the excitement that Israel in our glory might generate in the world. Amalek is the dampener, the downer. I spoke about this a lot in the Purim series, and it takes a very specific type of cleverness to counter the cleverness of Amalek. It's not a full-on conventional type of enemy, just as Amalek is so acutely attuned to the vulnerabilities of Israel, so too Binyamin can match that, because Binyamin's entire modus operandi is to sense the vulnerability of the enemy and attack in an underhanded and unconventional way. So Binyamin, carrying with him all of the silence, the mystery of his mother Rachel. That's what this source has to tell us. The source, which you can see in Hebrew or in English, this midrashic source, is one who is able to most adeptly battle that most insidious and perfidious of foes, Amalek. The cleverest Nachash. Amalek is compared to the Nachash, same gematria, and is suited for that kind of a showdown. Okay, the last thing that I'd like to say about Binyamin has to do with his role within Am Yisrael as separate from Am Yisrael, and yet in a way, he who can work with both camps. He is separate because he was born separately. He maintains a separate status. He did not participate in a lot of the misadventures of his brothers, and he is, and so that's what separates him. And he strongly maintains the stature of the lone wolf throughout the stories of the Bible, including most tellingly the end of Shoftim, when he separates almost permanently from Am Yisrael. But by the same token, I'll just ask you just to mute yourselves just for these last few minutes.
Put it in the wheelie.
By
Put it
by
in the suitcase.
see my thing might be you, who's not muted. By the same token, he is also the one in whose nachala, and whose ancestral allotment the Beit Hamikdash will sit, and he unites Am Yisrael through that positioning of being able to bond with the northern tribe. His nachala sits right between Ephraim and Yehuda, so he can bond with his blood brother Ephraim. Ephraim is Yosef, right? So they have that natural bond. But remember that Binyamin also politically and ideologically bonded with Yehuda, with the golden son of Leah. So he's able to be in both camps fairly easily. And that is why one of the reasons why the Beit HaMikdash was entrusted to Binyamin, because he could be that binder and that uniter of all of Am Yisrael. Also, that is why his flag is an indiscriminate color, neither one dominant color or the other. It's an amalgamation, as it were, of all of the other 11 colors of his brother's flag, symbolizing the unity of Am Yisrael. So I want to end because we are at the hour mark. Here it is. Here's the Targum Sheni that Mordechai was saying about how he doesn't bow to anybody because he's from Binyamin. I want to end with this beautiful verse from Dvarim. Vayhi bishurun melech b'hitasef rashe'am yachad shivtei Yisrael. This is a verse that I chose to round off this series on the Shvatim because it speaks not only to a historical moment. Most of the commentaries say that this verse from Dvarim talks about the experience at Sinai and the Brit Torah, the giving of the covenant of the Torah, but also scopes forward and speaks to our future. We are a tribal people. We have always been a tribal people. We will always remain a tribal people. By that, I mean that we are not homogeneous. We celebrate our heterogeneity, our different experiences in our different, especially in our different exile experiences over the last 2,000 years, have enriched our people, and we bring those experiences together, Yachad Shiftei Yisrael. And only once we can join together all of our different tribes can HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be really crowned as king, B'dasef Rashayam, when we all manage to assemble together in an emergent malchut, and an emergent harmonious system of tribal integration. I'll end with that, and I will take any questions, but I realize that I still have somewhat of a captive audience. If you have to go, then go. But there was one more thing that I really wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to. And that is that this is one of my favorite midrashim. And so I didn't have a chance to talk about it, and I want to talk about it. If you have to leave, leave. But I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes talking about this. This is a midrash that, to me, as someone who reveres Sifrut Chazal and reveres midrash as the most effective tool in Chazal's arsenal for teaching some of teaching their understanding, their most sensitive read of Tanakh. This is a midrash that is, in my mind, almost the perfect midrash to explain what midrash is. This midrash is based on a pasuk about the meeting of the brothers Yosef and Binyamin. And it's a very famous midrash, and most of you will be familiar with it. Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv vayefk. My purpose in bringing this midrash was to talk about the Beit HaMikdash, that Yosef was crying. He fell on Binyamin's neck, and he cried. Right? Yosef he comes to tears easily. He gets that from his father, the question that the midrash is going to ask, midrash has something deep to teach, but it will have to base itself. Of course, there's got to be a textual pin. There's always a textual pin for midrash. Tzavarei is in the plural. What does it mean? The necks of, right? And Elazar ben Pedat is going to learn a deeper meaning from the duality of the necks of Binyamin. Yosef ra'a baruch hakodesh shnei beit hamikdashot atidin libanot bechakosha Binyamin v'atitin lecharev. He saw that the two temples would be built in the territory of Binyamin, and then they would eventually be destroyed. And so it caused him to cry. Binyamin, in turn, is going to cry on the neck of Yosef, because he saw that the Mishkan in Shiloh, which was built in the territory of Ephraim, in the territory of Yosef, would not last, and it too would be destroyed. And neither of them would cease their crying. They were so distraught at the destruction of this holiness until Hakadosh Baruch Hu. The mashal is that we don't stop crying until Hakadosh Baruch Hu will hear our cry and will answer our cry. It's this eternal cry that hasn't yet been addressed. It's the cry of Chorban, which hasn't reached its tikkun yet. Now, why do I love this midrash so deeply, other than the gorgeous message that it has to convey? I love it because it does what midrash is meant to do, which is collapse time. It takes a moment in the life of Yosef and Binyamin, in a very personal moment of two blood brothers who are reuniting, and it scopes it out in its magnitude. So it is a moment that is on the one hand a moment of the unity and the reunification of these brothers and the sons of Rachel, and it is at the same exact time a far more momentous occasion. It is an occasion that scopes forward still beyond our time, because we are still weeping, to the time when our supplications and our tefillot will be heard, and there will no longer be those tears. It is the power of midrash. If you think about it, if you can think about moments in your own life that meant something at the very moment, but you almost knew at that moment that it was something far more momentous than just that one moment, right? The moment, however it might translate in your own life, the moment when you found out you were going to conceive a child, or any moment that stood on its own, but reverberates throughout your own personal history, and in the case of midrash, throughout the history of Am Yisrael. So thank you for letting me wax poetic a little bit about midrash. And I see that there's one comment, losing sound. Okay. Oh, here we go. It's interesting we're called Bnei Yisrael, even though only Binyamin was born to Yisrael. Yes. But that's because we are not the sons of Yaakov. We are the tribes. And the tribes are like the development after Am Yisrael has already become a nation. And Yisrael is our national name. And Yaakov is a different element of who we are, but not in the sense of our nationality. It is telling that Yaakov does not correct the painful names which Leah gives to her first children, but is quick to correct the possibly negative name which Rachel gives to her last child. And his father called him, does avoid identifying whether it was Yaakov or Yisrael who named him. At this fraught moment of Rachel's death, I would expect Yaakov to be the dominant persona. Yes, this is a yes, and I didn't think of that there have been other very painfully named children where Yaakov never tried to correct, and that point hangs. It hangs for all time, and we don't know. You say here that his father called him. We don't know whether that's calling him with Yaakov or calling him with Yisrael. Yes, and it would seem from Binyamin's very concept that it could very well be Yisrael, because he carries with him more than Yaakov, because he was born into a father who is also Yisrael. Ehud is the coolest, and I hands down, yes, absolutely. It's like V'rav Ya'avod Sa'ir can be read two ways. Sorry, what do you mean by that?
The same as Binyamin's Ev Toref, the way he reads it. It could either mean that the older will serve the younger, or the younger could serve the older. It depends how you sort of punctuate it.
The Rav Yavod Sa'ir. Right.
Right.
Has
the
anyone
Rav Yavod, the older shall
serve the younger,
work, or either serve the younger or make the younger work for him.
Okay.
I've heard that interpretation, that it could be read the same way. So I was thinking Binyamin's Ev Toref was similar to the explanation you read from, I think it was Rav Hirsch, right?
Yes.
Who read it? Yeah.
Yes. right, who was careful with the yitraf, right? And because it wasn't a it could go either. I don't know enough about
Right.
biblical grammar to say whether it could go either way, but it definitely seems like the verb seems like a verbal form, like a verb form, and not an adjective form.
Right, right.
Okay.
No, it really is.
Tamar?
Yeah.
It really
Sorry.
it's a word order. So Binyamin, comma, a wolf, he will, consume, or he will, attack.
Right.
So Rav, comma, Ya'avod Sa'ir. The younger Ya'avod Sa'ir is just the
Right. The
word
younger will
order.
serve the Rav.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, I
that's how we
wonder-
should.
Mhm.
That's how we
My
traditionally
only
read.
comeback would be like, from the would we have to do a survey of, again, having very little grounding in biblical grammar? Is that an extreme exception, right? Is this a drash, or like I don't it would be very troubling to me that Rav Hirsch, who's coming in the 19th century, is pointing out something that had eluded Chazal and the Rishonim and the Achronim.
Well-
And maybe another, like, that's why I brought it as almost like it's why doesn't Rashi say that?
Because
This is what
Rashi,
bothers me.
you don't, but that's Rashi can't say everything. He says what he likes the best. Because
Okay.
and then because he picks and chooses, and that's
But
fine.
but Rashi's also, but what about Rav Saja, who's like who
They're
who
each-
wrote the first grammar? Like,
Each
why
of
are
them, they
it's
each of them
it's the grammar point. It's not a matter of like, like where, if it's such a grammatically clear construct of a verb, then, and not a descriptive, then how come most of them Farshim are saying he's a ravenous wolf, right? Or he's
Because
a
he's
predatory wolf.
because he's looking at Yitrof as he will toref. He who is the he, who is the subject, and who is the object. And in Hebrew, as we can, and biblically, it happens all the time where the word order is flexible. And because there is no punctuation, it lends itself to multiple shivim panim laTorah.
Okay, so Binyamin is the wolf who will tear apart, as opposed to Binyamin will tear apart the wolf. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right.
Okay, Tamar?
Not like a description.
this-
I see. It's still maintaining the verbal form. You're just,
Yes.
it's not like a predatory wolf. It's a wolf who is preying.
Yeah.
He is a wolf who is, okay.
Yitrof is a verb.
Right.
Anybody who translates it as an adjective is like, I would have issue with that.
Right. Because it's not right.
Yeah, but it's the word order, and when it's poetry, I mean, a lot of the Torah is not prose; it is poetic, and certainly Yaakov's tzava is poetry.
Right.
So then word order is throw it out, because in poetry you can just move the words around. So, and same with Rav Ya'avod Sa'ir.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then it also helps me, it helps me talk about the idea of destroying Amalek, if the wolf is Amalek, right? I mean, I don't have to talk about it, but first says it. So
Yeah, exactly.
Well, clearly the reading of it as an adjective is more common, as you pointed out, ravenous, because there's even a song that Yoram Gaon sings, and he says, Binyamin Ze'ev Toref, which adopts the adjectival definition.
right.
Well, but it's not,
Right.
oh,
Is that
wait,
just a
whoa,
mistake?
that's, wait.
Is that a
Toreh
verb?
is not Yitrof.
No, I know. That's
Yehoram,
like-
he just he changed the word. He
I
changed the
understand,
whole
but
word.
he's
Oh, Rafe is like he is currently he is currently preying upon, right?
or
Like it's a verb still.
he is a ravenous wolf. He's a
Right.
Ze'ev Toref.
Toref in that sense can be both an adjective or the present tense of the verb.
Yes, correct.
Yes, but Yitrof with the yud in front
Must
of
be
it is that's
Future
that's
tense.
deed. That's
it's
actually
future, right? Okay.
so.
Okay.
So Tamar. So since we're on overtime as it is, here I will throw a monkey wrench into everything.
Okay.
Just something for you to consider. When Binyamin is born, it's bittersweet for Yaakov. His birth is Rachel's death.
Right.
And it would not be beyond some contemplation or possibility that he has mixed feelings about this baby. This baby killed Rachel. And that thought he can always push down, but sometimes it comes up again. And at the end of his life, he looks at Binyamin and he knows
Right.
that he is the Ze'ev who tore open
Yafa.
Rachel.
Yafa.
And there's
Yeah.
something that and that's that, that bubbles up at the end of his life.
Yafa. No, I really that really does make a lot of sense. He is, because at the end of it, he's a Ze'ev. Binyamin is a Ze'ev. And I was thinking of it as like scoping out towards the future and how he's going to, what kind of warfare he's going to engage in. And what you're saying is that from his very genesis, he was a predator. Like he preyed on his mother. He
Yeah.
killed his mother.
Yeah. And that's that scene of blood and death. And then, so the baby, yes, he's the last thing of Rachel, but it's, he has mixed feelings too, because he lost her.
It's really important to keep that in mind, because I think many of us I can speak only for myself, think of Binyamin over the course of Yaakov's life, as I kept on trying to imagine him, this coddled, swaddled little boy, separated from all of the, grown-up misadventures, right? Like just, go play with your toys in the other room and don't get involved in all this disaster that the rest of your brothers are constantly involved in. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good point, and very, very, and yeah.
Tamar,
take
can I
that.
make a quick comment?
Yes,
I was just thinking of the futuristic nature of the tears of Yosef and Binyamin when they fall on each other's necks. Certainly reminds us or brings to mind the tears of Rachel.
Yes, and yes, absolutely. They're always crying. Like Rachel mevakal baneha, and Yaakov cries about Rachel. She awakens emotion within Am Yisrael. I think that that is the same for today. When I talk about the tribes, I obviously tribalism today, I'm not talking about Naphtali and Asher, but I am definitely talking about the kochot that are imprinted in our nation. And there are those, there's the kochot, the koach of Yosef is the koach of deep well springs of emotion, ruchniut, that come from a genuine place that's awakened within us. That's almost that defies explanation. It's more chok than it is mishpat. If I had to think of it like that, more like this is it's not something that is. It's the charismatic versus the politician, or the more. The Talmid Chacham, I guess. It's the tzaddik versus the Talmid Chacham. Right?
Almost more part of their DNA than the sons of Leah.
Absolutely.
It's more
Absolutely.
right.
And it's a strong strain within contemporary Am Yisrael. I don't know about, even though I consider myself a student of history, I always think of the diaspora experience as much more of a Leah type experience, because Judaism was in a sense reduced to a religion. And what our experience now as Am Yisrael, wherever we may be, is emergence from the misconstruing of Judaism as a religion, and the proper construction, the proper understanding of Judaism as something far more than a religion, as a peoplehood. And I'm not saying that we're not a religion as well. We don't observe the religion of Judaism, but to me, Yisrael is a better term than Yehuda, because Yehuda is Leah and limiting, and Yisrael is much more comprehensive and incorporates Bnei Rachel, incorporates Yosef much more than Yehuda does. So yeah, I'm still Jewish, but I'm also Yisrael. Yeah, sorry.
Did anybody mention that he tried to protect him and not send him down to Egypt? It was a really very strong protection.
Yehuda.
No, I mean Yaakov.
Yaakov,
to
yes.
send them down.
Right.
So
Yaakov
he
didn't want
protected
to.
this little boy. It was a certain protection of that. Yeah, but you mentioned that little boy that he protected.
Nachon, that's why I think that many of us think of Yaakov as extremely protective of this little boy Binyamin, when Ruthie was pointing out that you can hold that, and that can be true. And I don't know, and Binyamin was not necessarily a little boy at this point, but he was definitely protected, absolutely. And and his father was clearly frantic about ensuring that he remained alive. And Yehuda was willing to give up everything. Yehuda says, the Midrash says, I'll give up both of my lives, my life in this world and my life in the world to come, just in surety for Binyamin. Absolutely. But at the same time, we can also say that his very nature, Binyamin's very nature, was a Ze'ev Yitraf. And much more complicated than that sweet little boy that maybe, we've always been conditioned to think of him as. Okay, everyone.
Thank
This
you.
has really been a pleasure. And I hope that we have opportunities in the future to learn together.
Amen.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Be careful.
Tam-
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to think that if you're thinking of Yonatan as sort of the paradigmatic Binyamin, then you see that he's also capable of great love and of uniting Yehuda, because the way he describes the love that he had for David is, ahevo, like ahavat nafsho ahevo,
Yes.
which kind of reminds me of v'nafsho kshura b'nafsho, when they talk
Yes.
about Yaakov and Binyamin.
Yes. We shouldn't think of Binyamin as only isolationists and secessionists, even though we can have a strong tendency to do that, because there's good reason to think of Binyamin as the lone wolf, not only because of the lone wolf motif, but because of Shoftim, because of the end stories of Shoftim. But absolutely, Binyamin, and also because of the silence of Esther and the silence of Shaul. There's a strong, kind of silent, standoffish presence that Binyamin can take on. But you are 100% true that there's also this deep arevut, this deep sense of mutuality that Binyamin stands for. It's the arevut of Shaul and Yonatan, of Shaul and David, with Binyamin joining with Yehuda when the kingdom split, the Beit HaMikdash at the meeting point of Binyamin and Yehuda, where there's a midrash that Binyamin was the first shevet in the Yam Suf alongside Nachshon ben Amidav of Yehuda. Binyamin will always join with Yehuda with the Leah force, right? Like they'll build that bridge, and that's a tough bridge to build. So your point is very well taken. Thank you. Sorry.
This Shabbos, our rabbi spoke about the fact, exactly what you said, that Judaism is not a religion; it's a peoplehood.
It is
exactly the topic of his sermon.
I think it's acutely important in our day and age not to reduce Judaism to a religion, because we have plenty of people who would like to reduce us to a religion. We don't need ourselves to do that. The more we're reduced to a religion, the more one can claim that we're not a nation and we don't have we don't have the rights of a nation.
Exactly.
So it's important for us to stress the Yisrael aspect. And by Yisrael, I don't mean the state of Israel. I mean our nationality as the Jewish people, regardless of whether we're religiously observant or not. Okay. Be well, everyone.
Thank you.